Hello, biology class. This is the content video for the second half of Unit 2, Lesson 4. We're going to talk about how cells get and use energy through cellular respiration, and then we're going to talk about an edge case where they don't use photosynthesis or cellular respiration called chemosynthesis. And so my head's going to be at the bottom corner here today because most of our stuff is in the top and top right. So cellular respiration is a lot like photosynthesis, but it's the exact opposite. And if you look at this chemical equation, you can kind of see that, right? So this C6H12O6 is glucose, right? Photosynthesis makes glucose. 6 oxygen molecules are used for cellular respiration. Well, guess what photosynthesis makes? O2, oxygen molecules. Right? So when you breathe in the air, there's oxygen molecules. About 20% of the air is oxygen. Your body uses it with glucose from foods that you eat to make carbon dioxide, right? We breathe out carbon dioxide. That's a product of cellular respiration. Water, H2O, and energy. And that's the key thing here. We're looking for chemical energy from cellular respiration. Right? And there are 3 parts of cellular respiration. There's glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and then electron transport, sometimes called electron transport chain. Right? I am going to need you to know a little bit about each of these, but we are not going to go in depth. If you take the nursing class here, or if you go into science at all in college, you'll probably have to learn more about these, but for now, we're going to keep it simple. All right, so here is our cellular respiration diagram. If you want to, it'd be a good idea to start memorizing this. So glycolysis is the first step in cellular respiration. It occurs in the cytoplasm, so outside the mitochondria, where the rest of cellular respiration is going to take place. And glycolysis means glyco, so sugar, and lysis, to cut. So glycolysis cuts a glucose in half, and it forms 2 pyruvate molecules. I don't need you to know what pyruvate is. I just need you to know that glucose gets cut into 2 pyruvate molecules. This releases energy. So it uses 2 ATP, right? Uses 2 ATP to start with, but it makes 4 ATP. So it doubles the amount of ATP right there just by cutting glucose in half through glycolysis. All right. Next is the Krebs cycle. So the pyruvate get used in the Krebs cycle. Right? And the Krebs cycle, as it sounds like, it's a cycle. It repeats itself. I don't need you to know all the individual steps of the Krebs cycle. There's about 6 to 8, depending on who you ask and how they cut up the process. All right? But it turns those 2 pyruvate into more ATP. All right? It also has a couple byproducts of NADH and ADH and FADH, right? FADH2 and NADH get used in the electron transport chain, which is on the outside it's on the outside as in it's in the surface of the mitochondria, the plasma membrane there. And it is going to turn all of those into the materials we're going to need to give off. So it creates the water as a give off, and it creates more ATP. All right, so we've got 32 total, right, from the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. We've got 4 from the glycolysis, and we've got 2 more being used for ATP. So there's a little bit of difference here. So this is net versus gross. So net is your profit, right? It's how much total you get after everything's taken care of. And so we're starting this whole thing with 2 ATP, and we are going to end with 36 ATP. All right. So this 38 here is what is produced from the whole thing. But remember, we used 2 ATP to kick this off. All right. So we're starting with the glucose and 2 ATP, and we turn that into 38 adenosine triphosphate molecules. That's the energy source, right, that we've been talking about needing to use for everything that cells do. All right, so cellular respiration can occur a couple of different ways. That is the best outcome way. Oh, and it's called aerobic respiration. Aerobic means it requires oxygen. All right, so we go from glycolysis to the Krebs cycle to the electron transport chain. And that means the cell is getting enough oxygen to do those things. Now, if you've ever exercised at all, you know that sometimes your body starts to run out of oxygen. You start to breathe heavier. You may even start to turn like red in the face, and some people even get the shakes from too much exercise. All right, so if you don't have enough oxygen in your body for every cell to be doing cellular respiration, we're going to be doing what's called anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic means there's no oxygen for the respiration. All right, yes, you can still breathe. You still have oxygen coming into your body and carbon dioxide leaving the body, but there's not enough oxygen for the electron transport chain to happen. All right, and because we don't have enough oxygen for this stuff to happen, it just instead of going from glycolysis to the Krebs cycle to the electron transport chain, it goes from glycolysis to fermentation. And we make lactic acid and an alcohol. All right. I just need you to know that that's what it creates. That's all you need to know. Fermentation makes lactic acid or alcohol. So if you're doing what we would call aerobic exercise, aerobic meaning you have to breathe for it, your cells are actually doing anaerobic respiration, and they're going to start producing more and more lactic acid. You'll learn more about that stuff in health and PE if they go into that. But for now, this is just what I need you to know, the difference between anaerobic and aerobic respiration. Here is a big diagram of photosynthesis and respiration. This is the way I like to think about it because the two feed into each other, right? This is a giant feedback loop. Photosynthesis takes light energy from the sun and water to do the light dependent reactions, right? Then it uses carbon dioxide from the air that we exhale to do the Calvin cycle to make glucose. I know that the thing's in the way, so I'm going to stop pointing at it with my cursor. It'll go away. All right, so that green hexagon at the bottom, glucose, right? You ingest glucose. You eat food. And that glucose gets used in glycolysis, right? Then through breathing, right, you're going to intake oxygen when you breathe. The Krebs cycle and electron transport chain are going to occur, pump out even more ATP, right? And you're going to give off carbon dioxide and water, either through sweat or urination or breathing, because you're going to breathe out water droplets. And if you don't believe me and you've got some glasses on hand, all that fog on your glasses, that's water vapor. All right. If there's no light, though, you can't do photosynthesis, right? If you don't have light, you can't do anything down here, which means this whole right side can't happen because there's no glucose being made. So chemosynthesis, instead of using light energy, is going to use the breakdown of something called hydrogen sulfide, which is this thing in the chemical reaction, H2S. All right, so it's going to use hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide and a little bit of oxygen to create glucose, water, and sulfur. All right, This is mainly used by bacteria on the ocean floor, especially near the gap between crust plates. So deep down on the Earth's surface, below all the water where light can't get to, bacteria can use chemosynthesis to create glucose. All right. Once glucose has entered the mix, right? I'm going to go back. Once we've got glucose, you can do glycolysis, right? And you can do the Krebs cycle. And fish and small shrimp and crustaceans that live down there can get oxygen from the water instead of breathing it, right? So they can do the electron transport chain. So respiration can still happen down there, but photosynthesis can't. Chemosynthesis can, right? So we're using chemo, right? Chemical energy instead of light energy to do the synthesis that happens over here, right? It's just a little different. I do need you to know that the tests that you have to take for graduation on biology almost always have some form of chemosynthesis question on there. I just gave you all the information I've ever seen any of those ask about. All right. So we talked about cellular respiration, chemosynthesis. We talked about photosynthesis last time. All right. So this whole lesson takes all three of those things and smashes them together. I know it's a lot. That's why we're pretty much taking 2 whole weeks to get through this. All right. If you have questions about it, make sure you send me an email. Make sure you drop into office hours. There are assignments and even a project coming up about photosynthesis, cellular respiration, and chemosynthesis. So it is necessary for you to get this stuff. All right. This is what drives energy. What makes life able to happen on our planet. All right. Without this stuff, everybody dies. You don't have energy. Your body can't do anything. Plants can't do anything. Insects can't do anything. Everybody dies. All right. Without this stuff, life can't happen. It is important. It is a big thing. We're spending most of our time in our cell unit talking about it for a reason. Right? And if you're not reading the underlying hints there, this is important for the test too that's coming up. So if you have any questions, send me an email, come to office hours. Hope you have a good day.